I thought we were close. I really did. Then I saw the post she made, mocking me, humiliating me in front of thousands of strangers, my own daughter-in-law. I was shaking, couldn't sleep for days. My husband kept telling me to let it go, but something inside me snapped. I realized I had the power to take action, and I did something I never thought I would. I sold the house, the one she was living in, the one she thought was hers forever. And when she found out, her face told me everything. Before the story begins, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. My name is Emma, and I'm 68 years old. I've spent most of my life trying to be the kind of person people want to be around, the kind who doesn't make waves, the kind who shows up, who listens, who puts family first, always, no matter what it costs. Robert and I have been married for 43 years. We met in college, actually. He was studying engineering, I was studying literature, and we met at a campus coffee shop. He spilled his coffee on my notebook, and instead of being annoyed, I laughed. He laughed too. We've been laughing together ever since. We built a life together, raised 2 sons, Michael, our oldest, and James, our youngest, and we've been comfortable. Not wealthy, but steady. The kind of comfortable where you can help people when they need it, where you have a spare house, where you believe in building something for your children. We spent years paying off that Victorian house, maintaining it, imagining one day it might be a place where our grandchildren would run around. Michael met Vanessa at a law conference 8 years ago. She was brilliant, commanding, beautiful. The kind of woman who walked into a room and everyone knew it. She had this way of speaking that made you feel like she was the smartest person in any given space. When he brought her home that first time, I remember Robert and I looked at each other after she left. We didn't need to say anything. We both knew. This was serious. This was the woman he was going to build a life with. I was happy for him. I really was. I remember telling my sister on the phone that night, she's intimidating, but in a good way. She's going to push him to be better. They married 5 years ago, and I spent weeks helping with arrangements. I worked with a wedding planner, helped Vanessa choose flowers, though her mother had very strong opinions about roses versus peonies, and I made sure everything felt cohesive and beautiful. Vanessa's mother wanted everything done a certain way, and I learned quickly to step back and let her have the lead on major decisions. That's what good mothers-in-law do. That's what I thought, anyway. I was trying to set a tone of respect and boundaries, though I didn't realize at the time how important that would become. The wedding was held at a country club overlooking the river. It rained that morning, but by afternoon the sun came out, and there was this golden light across everything. I cried during the vows. Robert held my hand. Michael looked happier than I'd ever seen him. Vanessa looked stunning in her dress, and when she looked at my son, there was real love there. I was certain of it. For the first couple of years after they married, things were genuinely good. Michael and Vanessa would come to our house for Sunday dinners. Robert would grill steaks. He has this special recipe he's perfected over decades, and I'd make my lasagna. The recipe came from my grandmother, and I've made it the same way for 40 years. We'd sit on the patio until the sun went down, and we'd talk about work and dreams and the simple things that make life feel full. Vanessa seemed to enjoy it. She'd ask Robert about his engineering projects, ask me about my volunteer work at the library. She seemed genuinely interested, or at least I thought she did. Then Robert had his heart attack. 3 years ago now. It wasn't a massive one, thank God, but it was enough to scare us all into thinking about mortality. The doctors said it was a mild attack, that his heart was strong, that with some lifestyle changes he'd be fine. But for those first few days in the hospital, I wasn't sure. I remember standing in the hallway outside his room, thinking about how quickly everything could change, how fragile it all was. During his recovery, something shifted in our family. We needed help, physical therapy appointments 3 times a week, grocery shopping, medication management, someone to help him in and out of the shower. I was doing most of it, but it was exhausting. I'm not a young woman, and caring for someone full-time is harder than I expected. Vanessa was there consistently during that time. She'd bring meals she'd made herself, lasagna, actually, though not as good as mine, and she'd stay to help him eat. She'd drive me to his appointments when Robert wasn't well enough to go. She'd sit with him while I ran errands, just watching television together, keeping him company. I remember thinking at the time, she's really stepping up. She's becoming part of our family in a way that matters. But I see now that I was vulnerable. And vulnerability is something certain people can smell from miles away, like sharks sensing blood in the water. Around that same time, Michael and Vanessa had been struggling with getting pregnant. I didn't know how much it was weighing on them until much later. They'd been trying for 3 years, and nothing. They went through fertility treatments, expensive ones that insurance wouldn't cover. They had conversations with fertility specialists, considered adoption, explored every option. I remember Vanessa mentioning it to me one afternoon when we were alone in the kitchen preparing vegetables for dinner. She was cutting carrots, and her hands were shaking slightly as she talked. She looked so sad, so hopeless. She said something like, "Every month I get my hopes up, and every month I'm devastated. I don't know how many times I can do this, Emma. I don't know if we're ever going to have a baby." I held her hand and told her that sometimes these things take time, that it would happen when it was meant to. I meant it with everything in me. I believed it, and I wanted to help ease some of that pain. I started bringing her articles about fertility, recommended doctors, even offered to pay for some of the treatments if they needed help. So when Robert was recovered enough, and when Michael and Vanessa started talking about needing a fresh start, about wanting to move somewhere quieter, somewhere they could build a home of their own, we listened carefully. And we made an offer that I thought would change everything for the better. We had a second property, a beautiful Victorian house on the other side of town that we'd been renting out for years. Nothing fancy, but solid, good bones, character, the kind of house that had stories in its walls. We told Michael and Vanessa they could live there rent-free, just cover the property taxes and maintenance costs. We thought we were helping. We thought we were being generous in exactly the way families are supposed to be. Robert drew up a simple agreement, nothing binding, just a formality, and we all signed it. I remember thinking this was a gift, not just a house, but a fresh start, a place where they could build a life without financial pressure, a place where, hopefully, they could start their family. I should have known better. I should have learned by then that generosity can get mistaken for weakness, and that sometimes people take what's given to them and decide it was never given at all. It was theirs all along. Vanessa moved into that house like it was hers to keep. Slowly, Subtly, she began to treat it that way. She renovated the kitchen without asking us first. She consulted with contractors, ordered new cabinets, installed new appliances. Nothing wrong with renovations, except she didn't ask. She didn't tell us until after it was done. She painted the exterior a shade of blue that we'd never discussed. She planted a garden in the backyard, expensive plants and herbs, put up new fencing, paid thousands for it, and hung a swing on the porch where nobody had swung before. All nice things, all things that made the house feel like a home, like a reflection of her vision, her taste, her life, her dreams. But it wasn't her home. It was ours. Robert and I. We watched this happen, and we didn't say anything. What were we going to do? Complain about her making the house nicer? Michael seemed happy. Our son was smiling more, looking less stressed. That was enough for us. At least it was enough to keep us quiet. Meanwhile, I tried to maintain a close relationship with Vanessa. I'd drop by with baked goods, cookies, brownies, bread fresh from the oven. I'd invite her to coffee at our favorite cafe downtown. I'd send her little messages asking how she was doing, if there was anything she needed. For years, she seemed receptive to this. We'd have conversations that felt real, even intimate. I thought we were building something genuine between us. I thought we were becoming genuine family. 3 years into living in the house, Vanessa got pregnant. Finally. It had been 6 years of trying. When she told us, she cried happy tears in my kitchen. I cried too. We hugged for what felt like a long time. I felt her shaking in my arms, felt the relief flowing through both of us like a river. This wait was finally over. After all that pain, all that disappointment, all those moments of wondering if it would ever happen, it was happening. My grandson, Samuel, was born on a Tuesday in April. I was in the hospital the next morning with flowers and a stuffed animal, a teddy bear I'd picked out carefully. I held him in my arms, and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Not just grandmother love, though it was that too, a fierce sense of protection, a sense that this was my family, this was my blood. This was someone I would do anything for, someone I would take a bullet for without hesitation. I was there when they brought him home from the hospital. I spent the first week with them, sleeping on their couch, waking up at 2 a.m. for feedings, helping Vanessa navigate the exhaustion and pain of postpartum recovery. The first nights with the newborn are unlike anything else. Vanessa was dealing with bleeding, with soreness, with hormones that made her emotional in ways she couldn't control. I helped her with all of it. I was there because that's what you do. That's what family does. That's what love looks like. For a while after Samuel was born, things seemed to shift back to good. Vanessa seemed softer, less guarded. We'd talk for hours while Samuel napped. She'd tell me about her fears as a new mother, about the pressure she felt to bounce back quickly to her pre-baby body, about the tension between her and Michael over how much help they should ask for versus handle themselves. I listened. I advised. I tried to be the mother she might not have had. I didn't know much about her family, but I gathered there was distance there, something that had never been quite right. But here's the thing about being helpful, about being present, about being the person who shows up. People start to expect it. And when you're already the kind of person who shows up, showing up more just becomes the baseline, the bare minimum. Anything less feels like a betrayal to them. So when Vanessa started asking for things, Could you watch Samuel while I go to yoga? Could you pick up groceries on your way over? Could you help me with the garden? It felt natural. It felt like what grandmothers do. It felt like love. It felt like the foundation of something real and lasting. What it was, I'd learn much later, was leverage. I was at my bridge club one Wednesday afternoon when I first saw it. We'd been playing cards for an hour, and I was actually winning for once. My friend Susan had her phone out and she was scrolling through something and laughing. She'd been looking at TikTok videos, which she did constantly despite being 65 years old. She looked up at me with a weird expression, kind of embarrassed, kind of pitying, kind of like she wished she didn't have to show me something. She turned the phone toward me and said, Is that you?" It was a TikTok, a video. And yes, it was me. The video was maybe 30 seconds long. It showed a compilation of photographs from family gatherings, photos I recognized from our Sunday dinners, from Samuel's first birthday party, from casual afternoons in my own home with my family. But in each photo, my face had been altered, my smile made grotesque, my body made wide, exaggerated. And there were captions overlaid in that harsh, chunky font that TikTok uses. The captions said things like, "When your MIL acts like she's your mother," and "the way she inserts herself into everything," and my personal favorite, with a series of laughing emojis, "Does she not have a life?" The video ended with a caption that said, "Anyone else have a mill who's obsessed with being involved in every single thing? Just me? Toxic." It had been viewed 47,000 times. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe properly. Susan was saying something to me, some kind words, but I couldn't hear her properly. My ears were ringing like I'd been hit. I felt like I couldn't get enough air into my lungs. I sat down on the edge of her couch, and I stared at that phone. "Emma?" Susan's voice came through like it was from very far away. "Are you okay? That's really not okay. You should tell her." "How long?" I asked. "What?" "How long has this been up?" Susan checked the upload date. 3 days, maybe 4. It's been making the rounds. I've seen it twice today alone, and someone sent it to me through text yesterday. 3 to 4 days, which meant Michael and Vanessa and Samuel had been living their lives while thousands of strangers laughed at pictures of me. Pictures taken in my own home, by someone I'd welcomed into my life, someone I'd helped through the hardest times, someone I'd loved. I left Bridge Club early without explaining. I just grabbed my purse and left. I drove to the house, our house technically, though I hadn't thought of it that way in years. I pulled up and sat in the car for a long time, hands gripping the wheel, just trying to breathe. My heart was racing and I felt dizzy. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't know what I was even going to do. Part of me wanted to march to the door and confront her right there, demand an explanation, ask her how she could do this. Part of me wanted to go home and crawl into bed and pretend this wasn't real. Part of me wanted to call Michael and ask him if he knew, if he'd seen it, if this was something they'd laughed about together. In the end, I sat there for 20 minutes without moving, just staring at the blue house I'd helped make beautiful, and then I drove home. That night, I couldn't eat. Robert kept asking what was wrong, and I kept saying it was nothing, just a headache, just one of those days. He didn't believe me. He never does. He knows me too well. But he let it go. He had a way of knowing when to push and when to be quiet. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, and I replayed memories like they were a film I could rewind. All those times I'd shown up. All those times I'd made myself available without being asked. All those afternoons I'd watch Samuel so they could have time alone. All those meals I'd brought. All those moments I'd tried to build something real with Vanessa because I thought that's what she needed. All those times I'd sacrificed, and she'd been recording me the whole time, collecting moments, laughing at me, turning my love into content, using my presence as a punchline. The worst part wasn't even the video itself. The worst part was realizing that I'd been seen the entire time, and what Vanessa had seen was an opportunity. Not family, not someone worthy of respect, not someone to protect, just an opportunity to get attention online. I didn't sleep that night. I kept pulling up the video on my phone and watching it over and over. I found Vanessa's account and scrolled through. There were more videos, not all of them about me, but enough. Videos about Michael's family, about her workplace, about random people she'd seen. I'd read the comments, people saying things like, "OMG, the way she's always there," and "This is why I'd never let my MIL have that much access." And my personal favorite, from someone named Truthsayer47, "She's giving obsessed. Your husband needs to set boundaries yesterday." My own life dissected and mocked by teenagers I'd never met, by strangers, by people who didn't know me, didn't know my heart, didn't know that I'd been trying to do the right thing. By morning, I felt hollowed out, exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix. It was an exhaustion that went beyond physical tiredness. It was emotional exhaustion, spiritual exhaustion, the exhaustion of realizing that someone you loved had betrayed you. Robert noticed immediately when I came downstairs. He always does. He looked at me, really looked at me, and he said, "What happened?" I told him about the video. I showed him my phone. I watched his face go through a series of expressions, confusion, then recognition of what he was looking at, then anger, real anger, genuine fury. I'd been married to Robert for 43 years, and I'd learned to recognize the difference between his everyday irritation and the rare moments when he was truly furious. His jaw clenched, his hands became fists. This was one of those moments. "That's not right," he said quietly. "That's not right at all." "I know. She violated your privacy. She took pictures from your home and—" "I know Robert." He stood up and started pacing. That's what he does when he's upset. He walks it off like motion can help process emotion. He went to the window, then to the kitchen, then back to the table. "We need to call Michael. We need to talk to him about this. This is serious." I remember nodding, but even as I was nodding, I was thinking about how that conversation would go. Michael would be apologetic, probably. He'd be embarrassed. Vanessa would claim it was just a joke, that people were taking it too seriously, that she was just venting, that it wasn't that deep. And then we'd all be expected to move past it, to forgive, to pretend this hadn't happened, because that's what family does, or that's what I'd always been taught family does. Robert called Michael around 10 in the morning. I listened from the kitchen, watching Robert's jaw clench and unclench as Michael explained his wife's side of things. Yes, she'd posted the video. Yes, she realized now that maybe it was inappropriate. Yes, she felt bad. But also, Robert, she was just joking around. She didn't mean anything by it. Lots of people post about their in-laws online. It's pretty common. The comments got mean, but that was out of her control. She couldn't predict that people would be unkind. She exposed Emma to thousands of strangers. Robert said, his voice quiet and controlled in that way that meant he was barely holding it together. She mocked her publicly. She violated her privacy. I know, Dad, and we've talked about it. She's taking down the video. That doesn't undo the damage, Robert said. That doesn't undo what people already saw. That doesn't undo the violation or the humiliation. But eventually, the call ended the way these calls always end, with an understanding that we'd move forward, that we wouldn't dwell. That family is family, and you don't throw it away over a mistake. Robert hung up the phone and looked at me. She's taking it down, he said. She says she didn't realize how hurtful it was. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because the thing was, I didn't believe her, and even if I did, even if she truly hadn't realized, that didn't change what she'd done. It didn't change the fact that she'd chosen to do it in the first place. It didn't change the fact that she'd thought about it, planned it, recorded it, edited it, written captions, and posted it. That wasn't a mistake. That was a deliberate choice. The video came down that afternoon, but the damage didn't come down with it. The video had already been shared. Screenshots existed in people's phones. People I didn't know had already sent it to other people. My humiliation had taken on a life of its own, spreading like something alive and hungry, like a virus. And the worst part? The absolute worst part? Nobody around me seemed to understand how deeply wrong this was. Friends tried to comfort me by saying things like, well, at least she took it down, and she probably didn't mean any harm, and my personal favorite, you know how young people are with social media. They don't think. But she had thought. That was the thing. Vanessa was 35 years old. She was educated. She had a master's degree. She worked in marketing and advertising for God's sake. She understood metrics and engagement and virality. She knew how social media worked, how to craft a caption, how to make something shareable. She'd built her career on understanding how to influence people. She'd thought about it, and she'd done it anyway. I didn't see Vanessa or Michael for 3 weeks after the video incident. That was unusual for us. Normally, I'd see Samuel at least twice a week. We'd have coffee together, or I'd take him to the park. I'd have Michael and Vanessa over for dinner. I'd be present in a way that had become so much a part of my identity that the absence of it made me feel untethered, like I'd been cut loose from something essential. But I couldn't. I couldn't look at Vanessa's face without feeling something dark and sharp inside my chest. Every time my phone rang, I'd feel a spike of anxiety. Every time I saw a notification, I'd brace myself. Robert kept asking if I wanted to have a conversation with her. A real one, not the quick phone apology Michael had relayed. He thought talking might help me let it go. I don't want to let it go, I told him one night. We were lying in bed, and I was staring at the ceiling the way I'd spent so many nights doing these past few weeks. I don't want to be the person who pretends this was fine. I don't want to be the person who forgives everything, who accepts every apology, who keeps showing up no matter how many times someone hurts me. I'm tired, Robert. I'm so tired. Then what do you want? Robert asked. I didn't answer immediately, because the honest answer was complicated. What I wanted was for Vanessa to understand what she'd done to me. What I wanted was for her to feel the humiliation I'd felt. What I wanted was to matter enough that what I felt would actually change something in her life. What I wanted was justice, though that felt like a strange word for it. What I wanted was my power back. I'd spent so much of my life giving to my children, giving to my husband, giving to Vanessa when she didn't even deserve it. I'd made myself available until being available became my defining characteristic. And in doing so, I'd surrendered something essential. I'd surrendered the knowledge that I could say no, that I could take back, that I could hurt someone the way I'd been hurt. The house kept coming back to my mind. The Victorian. The one with the blue paint and the garden and the swing on the porch. The one where Vanessa had built her empire of entitlement. The one that legally belonged to Robert and me. I started researching. I pulled out old documents from a filing cabinet in Robert's study. I called our lawyer. I asked him questions about ownership, about tenancy, about what would happen if we decided to sell. He was cautious. He warned me that this could have repercussions in the family, that it might seem retaliatory, that I should think carefully about what I was doing, that I should consider if this was really the path I wanted to go down. But I had been thinking. I'd been thinking for 3 weeks while I stared at the ceiling and couldn't sleep, while I replayed conversations in my head, while I wondered what I'd done to deserve this. "Is it legal?" I asked him. "Yes," he said carefully, "but legality and wisdom aren't always the same thing." I wasn't looking for wisdom. I was looking for justice. I called a real estate agent. I didn't tell Robert what I was doing, and I know that was wrong, but I wasn't ready to have the conversation yet. I needed to know if this was even possible before I started talking about it. The agent came out to the house when I knew Vanessa would be at work. She walked through, making notes, asking questions about the age of the roof and the plumbing and the foundation. "It's a beautiful property," she said, "well maintained. The renovations to the kitchen are excellent. Someone's put a lot of love into this place." Yes, I thought bitterly. Someone has. She gave me an estimate. It was higher than I expected. The house had appreciated significantly in the 3 years Vanessa had lived there. The neighborhood had gotten more desirable. People wanted to live here now. I could sell it, pay off what little remained on the property, and have enough left over to do some things I'd been putting off. Enough to travel with Robert, enough to be comfortable. I sat with that thought for a day. I didn't sleep. I just lay there thinking about what it would mean, what it would do to Michael, what it would do to Samuel. But I also thought about what Vanessa had done to me. I thought about the betrayal. And then I made an appointment with the listing agent to officially put the house on the market. That's when I told Robert. We were having breakfast, and I just said it. "I'm selling the Victorian." He set down his coffee cup carefully. "Are you now?" I told him what I'd done. The research, the real estate agent, the listing. I told him how I'd been thinking about it and how I'd realized that maybe it was time for us to reclaim what was ours. Maybe it was time to use what we owned to build something for ourselves instead of always giving it away. Robert was quiet for a long time. I could see him processing, thinking about the implications, the fallout, the damage this would cause to our family. And then he said, "Good." I looked at him, surprised. "She made you feel small," he said simply. "She took something from you, your dignity, your trust, your sense of safety in your own family. She did that, and then she expected you to just accept an apology and move on. She expected you to keep showing up the way you always do. I'm tired of watching people treat you like that, Emma. I'm tired of it." I hadn't realized how much I needed him to say that. how much I needed someone to validate that what I was feeling wasn't small or petty or wrong. "The house will be listed by next week," I said. "Then let's make sure it's priced competitively," Robert said, and he reached across the table and squeezed my hand. The listing went up on a Wednesday. By Friday, there were 3 offers. The market was hot, and the house was charming in the way that made people imagine their own futures inside it. By the following week, we had a buyer, a young family with 2 children. They were excited. They were planning renovations. They were already imagining holidays in that garden Vanessa had built. I called Michael and asked him to meet me, not at the house, but at the cafe on Riverside where we used to get coffee sometimes when it was just the 2 of us. He came without asking too many questions, which told me he sensed something was coming. We ordered coffee. We sat at a small table by the window, and I told him that I'd sold the house. He went very still. "What do you mean you sold it?" he asked. "I mean, we sold it, Robert and I. The property is no longer ours. The current buyers are taking possession in 6 weeks." "But, Mom..." He looked genuinely confused, like this didn't make sense, like I just told him something in a language he didn't speak. "Vanessa is living there. Samuel is living there. We've made that our home." "I know. You can't just sell the house we're living in." "Actually," I said quietly, "I can. It's our house. You've been living there rent-free as a gift, but it was always still ours. That was the agreement." His face changed. I watched it happen in real time, the confusion giving way to understanding, and understanding giving way to anger. "This is about the video," he said. It wasn't a question. "It's about a lot of things," I said. "The video is just the most recent thing." "You're selling our home because Vanessa made a mistake? A social media mistake that lots of people make? That's insane, Mom. That's completely disproportionate." I stirred my coffee. "Your wife publicly humiliated me to thousands of strangers. She took pictures from my home and used them to mock me. And when she apologized, she told your father that it was fine because lots of people do it. That other people being cruel doesn't make it less cruel. So your response is to make us homeless?" His voice was rising. People at nearby tables were starting to look. "That's your solution?" "You're not homeless," I said calmly. "You have 6 weeks to find another place to live. You have jobs, income, the ability to secure housing. You'll be fine." "The problem isn't whether we'll be fine," Michael said. "The problem is that you've decided to blow up your relationship with your son because your daughter-in-law was thoughtless." I looked at him then, really looked at him, and I saw something I hadn't expected to see. I saw a man who didn't understand that there were consequences, that there were moments when you had to accept responsibility not just for your own actions, but for the actions of the people you chose to be close to. That sometimes the people you love do things that are wrong, and it's not your job to absorb that wrong without any response. "If you'd been here," I said to him quietly, "if you'd stood up and said, 'That's not okay, what my wife did is not okay,' then we wouldn't be having this conversation. But you didn't. You apologized for her, and then you moved on. You expected me to move on. You expected me to keep showing up and loving you the way I always have, as if nothing had happened." "Because nothing did happen," he said. "It was a stupid video. It's gone now. It's done." But it wasn't gone. And it wasn't done. It existed in the memories of thousands of people. It existed in the part of me that was learning that I couldn't trust Vanessa, And if I couldn't trust Vanessa, then how could I trust Michael for choosing to stay with someone who'd betrayed me? "You need to leave," I said. "You need to find somewhere else to live, and you need to do it in the next 6 weeks." Michael stared at me. I'd never seen his face look quite like that. Like his mother had just turned into a stranger. Like he didn't recognize me anymore. He stood up without saying anything else. He walked out of the cafe, leaving me sitting there with 2 untouched coffees going cold. The next few weeks were surprisingly quiet. There were no family dinners, no Sunday gatherings, no messages from Vanessa asking if I could watch Samuel. I'd thought there might be anger, confrontation, attempts at negotiation. Instead, there was silence. It was almost worse than if they'd been actively fighting with me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking about Samuel, wondering if he understood what was happening, wondering if he thought his grandmother had abandoned him. Robert asked me several times if I regretted what I'd done, and the honest answer was, I didn't know. I felt powerful in a way I hadn't in years. I felt like I'd finally set a boundary, like I'd finally said no to something after a lifetime of saying yes. But I also felt the weight of what I'd done. I'd hurt my son. I'd disrupted my grandson's life. I'd ended whatever relationship I'd had with Vanessa. Was that justice? Or was that just revenge dressed up in the language of self-respect? 3 weeks after I told Michael, Vanessa called me. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello." Her voice was shaky. "Hi, Vanessa." "I want to understand what happened," she said. "Michael said you sold the house because of the TikTok, but that doesn't make sense. You said it was fine. You said—" "I never said it was fine," I interrupted. "I said we'd move past it. But moving past something doesn't mean it didn't happen, and it doesn't mean there aren't consequences." "Selling the house isn't a consequence for me," she said, and I could hear the accusation in her voice. "It's a consequence for Michael, for Samuel. They're the ones who are suffering." "Yes," I said. "That's the point." There was a long pause. I think she'd expected me to soften, to explain that I didn't mean it, to offer some way out of this. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I'm actually sorry. I've been thinking about what I did, and I realized how wrong it was. I was venting about feeling like you were always there, always inserting yourself, and I used humor to deflect from the real issue, which is that I have boundary issues with my in-laws. It wasn't about you being a bad person. It was about me being unable to create healthy distance." It was a good apology. It was thoughtful and specific and took ownership. A month ago, I might have accepted it. I might have felt something crack open inside me, the way I had when she'd called me after Samuel was born. But something had shifted in me, or something had shifted back. "I appreciate that," I said. "I do, but it doesn't change anything. The house is sold. The new owners take possession in 3 weeks." "Isn't there any way—" she started, and I could hear the desperation in her voice now, the realization that this was real, that I was actually going to go through with this, that there was no magic phrase that would undo what I'd done. "No," I said, "there isn't." When I hung up the phone, I didn't feel the triumph I'd expected to feel. I felt tired, deeply, bone-tired, in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. Robert found me in the kitchen afterwards. I was making tea, going through the motions without really being present in the moment. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Vanessa called," I said. "She apologized. A real apology. And it doesn't matter. I sold the house anyway. Robert didn't say anything immediately. He just wrapped his arms around me from behind, and we stood there in the kitchen, two people who'd been married for 43 years, and I leaned back against his chest and let him hold me. "Is this who you want to be?" he asked quietly. "Someone who does things to hurt people, even in response to being hurt?" I didn't answer immediately. I thought about the video. I thought about the thousands of strangers laughing at me. I thought about Vanessa sitting in my home, building memories with my grandson, all while planning how to use those memories as content. I thought about Michael's face in the cafe, filled with shock and pain. I thought about the silence of the last 3 weeks. "I don't know," I said finally. "I thought it would feel better." "And it doesn't?" "No," I admitted. "It just feels like I've made a terrible mistake that I can't unmake." The young family took possession of the Victorian on a Tuesday in June. I didn't go to watch them move in. I couldn't bear to see someone else's joy layered on top of my daughter-in-law's loss. Michael didn't reach out. Vanessa did, once, to tell me that they'd found a rental about 20 minutes away. It was nice. It had good schools. Samuel was adjusting well. They'd be fine. It was a neutral message, an informational message, a message from someone who'd given up on me. I thought about calling Michael. Dozens of times I thought about it. I prepared speeches in my head. I rehearsed apologies that felt only half true because I wasn't sure what I was actually sorry for. Was I sorry I'd sold the house? Was I sorry I'd hurt Michael and Samuel? Or was I just sorry that it hadn't made me feel better? Summer turned to fall. The holidays came and went without family gatherings. I didn't see my grandson on Halloween, didn't help him pick out a costume, didn't see his face light up when he got candy. I didn't sit around a Thanksgiving table with my son and his family. I didn't feel the weight of them in my life the way I used to. What I did feel was a kind of hollowness that no amount of righteous indignation could fill. I started seeing a therapist, something I'd never done before. Dr. Chen listened to me talk about the video, about selling the house, about my son not calling. After a few weeks, she asked me a question that stopped me cold. "Emma," she said, "what did you hope would happen when you sold the house?" I didn't know how to answer that. I thought I'd wanted Vanessa to hurt. I thought I'd wanted her to understand the violation. But sitting there in that office, I realized something. I'd wanted to hurt Michael too, my own son. And that realization broke something open inside me. In October, almost a year after the video, I saw Vanessa at the grocery store. We were both in the produce section, both reaching for apples at the same time. We made eye contact for maybe 2 seconds. That's all it took for me to see the full weight of what I'd done. She looked older, tired, like someone who'd been carrying something heavy for a very long time. Her hair was grayer than I remembered. She looked like she'd been through something. I expected her to look away first. Instead, she held my gaze, and very slightly she nodded. Not a greeting, not a reconciliation. Just an acknowledgement. A moment of two people seeing each other clearly without the possibility of looking away. I drove home and sat in my car for an hour without turning on the engine. That night, I called Michael. He answered, and I could hear the surprise in his voice. "Mom?" "Hi," I said, and my voice was shaking. I wanted to apologize. There was a long pause. For what? "For selling the house," I said. for using it as a weapon, for letting my hurt justify hurting you and Samuel, for not accepting Vanessa's apology when she gave you one, for choosing revenge over my relationship with my son. She gave me one too, Michael said, a long time ago. I know. I'm sorry it took me this long. He was quiet for so long that I thought the call had dropped. Then, do you want to come over for dinner this Saturday? We can introduce you properly to the new house. Samuel's been asking about you. I started crying then, quiet tears that I couldn't stop. I'd like that, I said. We hung up and I sat there holding the phone, thinking about dignity and justice and revenge, about the ways we hurt people and the reasons we tell ourselves it's justified, about the narrow space between power and poison. I'm 68 years old, and I've learned something I wish I'd known when I was younger. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to take action. Sometimes it's to stop. Sometimes it's to put down the weapon you've been holding and admit that wielding it was never going to make you feel the way you thought it would. The real version of power isn't about making other people suffer. It's about knowing when you have the opportunity to do it and choosing something else instead. Vanessa and I will never be what we were. I'll always remember the video. I'll always remember that moment of seeing my face distorted and mocked. But I'm learning that remembering something doesn't mean I have to be defined by it forever. I'm learning that growth sometimes looks like apologizing to your son for weaponizing love. It looks like accepting your daughter-in-law's humanity while still honoring your own hurt. It looks like showing up to dinner even though you're afraid. Samuel is 4 now. He barely remembers the year I wasn't in his life. For him, it was a gap in the timeline. For me, it was a long education in the cost of revenge. On Saturday, I made lasagna, the same recipe I've been making for 40 years. And I drove to the house where my son is raising his family, and I knocked on the door. And when they opened it, my grandson ran toward me, and I held him the way I should have all along. Like there was nothing in this world more important than the fact that he existed. Vanessa stood in the doorway watching, and when our eyes met, there was something different. Not forgiveness, maybe, not yet, but understanding, an acknowledgement that we were both learning how to live with what we'd done. Michael hugged me, and I felt him crying too. We stood there in that doorway, my son and I, holding each other, and I realized that this reconciliation, this willingness to try again, was the only justice that mattered. What would you do if this happened to you? Tell me in the comments. I always read them. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more true life stories like mine.